Hey friend, in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how I block in paint and paint figures in a very loose and painterly style of painting these figures, showing a few different examples of gestures, how I would paint in some shadows. So if you have been dying to learn how to paint figures with watercolor, then let's dive in. Okay, so to start with painting figures with watercolor, I'm just going to grab a really thick, big round brush. This is a size 16 round, which you could go bigger if you want to just practice how to make these marks for your gesture painterly figures. And before we even start bringing in any colors, we're just gonna paint these shapes so we can get that motor skill down for how to create and paint painterly figures in your landscapes with black only. So I'm just gonna plop, literally plop, for my head shape in an oval. Literally just kind of picture you're putting down a thumbprint. And we're just gonna keep it really simple and loose for our first few figures. And so I just am grabbing water now with less black on my brush, and I'm just pushing the brush down as much as I can to create those wide shoulders. And then remember, we're just dragging it down to create this carrot shape. I can give it 2 legs if I want, or make them a little bit fatter and then long, or just make that a little bit fatter at the bottom with this point. I can go in and just keep all of your strokes as simple and basic as possible. I love the magic of watercolor when you play with wet and wet technique, so that's gonna create a really fun shadow on that guy. And then maybe we'll just take this out for a little bit of a shadow there. And for our next figure, just continue to practice this over and over again. So we've got our oval shape. But misshapen. Maybe this guy is more of a businessman, so we're gonna do a rectangle. And then taper down with our legs and make it a little bit boxier for those dress pants instead of pointy. And we can drop in some color if we want. And add in our shadow, depending on where he's walking. So just manipulate your shapes, following the carrot principle. Maybe I'll do a little kid in a big fluffy coat. Love how this is bleeding. And he's got his little coat on. We know that there's pants starting here because we're gonna darken them a little bit. And so just simple gestures like, or simple strokes like that will just make the figure pop more, and it will tell you the story of their outfit a little bit more. All right, so now that we've done some figures in just using our black color, we're gonna start to paint and add color to our figures. This is where you really start to have fun with it and tell a whole story with your figures in a scene. And I love obviously playing with wet and wet technique and not making the clothing too detailed or too refined, because the magic is really in the wet and wet technique. Now for my color figures, I like to keep my colors really vibrant, really juicy. So I'm gonna use some quinacridone red. All right, so let's start with a couple quick and easy figures and clusters of figures that we can practice over and over again to refine this before we put these figures in our scene. I'm starting with a thick, creamy amount of carbon black to just place in my head shapes. Maybe we've got this group of people that's going to be next to each other walking along. Maybe one more person right here. At different heights, staggering different heights, because obviously that's how we would see it in real life. And then I'm gonna grab a rich, juicy color for my first little guy's base. I've got this quinacridone violet. I'm gonna make it kind of a milky consistency so that it bleeds with all my other fun colors that I'm gonna add into here. We'll go a little bit further down. I don't like to put my shoulders right up against the head. It just feels like they're hunched. And as I work my way down this shape, I'm creating that carrot figure. So we're gonna start to come to a point, or maybe two legs. There, we don't need to complete the shape because it looks awesome like that. And then I'm gonna grab some French blue or cobalt blue or ultramarine and just switch up and add wet and wet technique. Drop in some color for either a little shadow, or you can separate it by top and bottom to show different pants and shirt combo. So then my next guy, I'm gonna go pretty quickly because I want all of my figures to bleed together. Maybe I'll grab some phthalo turquoise. If you don't have phthalo turquoise, you can add Prussian blue to Kuprick green. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, but just a slightly different shape. So we're gonna blend right up against that neighboring shape and maybe create more of a boxy upper half. And then our pants will be a different color. Let's do someone real stylish who's really into pushing boundaries with their fashion, and we'll kind of paint in this orange and blue. Try and get their legs matched up height-wise. That's fun. And then next we'll do maybe Prussian blue. Prussian blue. And maybe more of an A shape for this fella. And separation between the rectangle with a little arm poking out. Look at how fun that is. Maybe grab some thicker Prussian blue, put it in on one of the sides to show some variety. Maybe some Kuprick green pants, because why not? Pretty fashionable looking group. And if you look at this tiny, tiny gap of white space that creates kind of this like parentheses shapes with the legs really helps to elevate the gesture of this figure. So even little details like that, like the separation of the arm and the separation between the legs down here for those is what makes all the difference in painting these figures, these figure scenes. And then you can add a shadow if you want to. You can keep your shadow really simple and just do little blocks and then fade it out. You can do just make sure your shadows are all going in the same direction or as parallel as possible. And that's a quick and easy way to do painterly gesture figures. So practice these really loose, just smudging paint on paper, creating these loose shapes of rectangle or oval at the top and tapering and getting skinnier at the bottom to create that overall carrot shape. And in the next tutorial next week, we are going to be painting figures in a landscape. If you want to get a lot more refined with how you create figures in a scene and showing distance and perspective and vantage point, make sure you guys check out my course, The Art Within. I go into depth on perspective and vantage point and a lot more sketching and stuff too with figures as well. And next week we are going to be painting some figures in a whole scene or in a landscape. There you have it. I hope that was fun for you. I love painting and sketching and illustrating figures. It's one of my favorite things to do, especially just doodling out in nature or on my art retreats that I do abroad. I love to bring a sketchbook along and just sit at a bench at a park and sketch or paint these little vignettes and little scenes. They're so much fun. If you fill up an entire sketchbook with these scenes, it can be really fascinating to look back on. And if you want more in-depth lessons on perspective and vantage points and how to design a scene and all of that, composition, color theory, etc., make sure you check out my online course, The Art Within. It's really in-depth and very thorough and will basically have you feeling like you just completed art school. So if you want to check it out, it's jennarainey.com/the-art-within. We'll link to it below, and I will see you in the next video.